signal we can stand for him. At 1 p.m. Okay?
All right.
Deputies, can you clear the courtroom for me, please?
So everybody clear the courtroom, we'd appreciate it. Head out.
out here all morning long. They have been giving us, the media, updates on some of those questions and things that have been going on. As you saw, as you watched that verdict come in and they panned the camera over to the Jean family, there were a lot of tears. We would assume tears of joy. You remember the last time we saw them cry in the courtroom was late last week when they were watching that body camera video. They were watching those first responding police officers try to save Botham Jean's life. They had to leave the courtroom for that. So this is a marked difference of emotion for this family. We'll be interested to speak with them. Of course, we want to find out what they would like to see as far as a sentence, which is the next phase of this case.
Larry, before you go, let's talk about the jury makeup. What can you tell our viewers about what you know and what you have seen from this jury?
Now, this was a largely minority jury, if you will. We followed this jury for quite a while. Remember, jury selection in this case was very atypical. It happened a little differently than it normally did. If you recall, there was a change of venue motion that was still on the table during jury selection. So as they started to whittle down all these jurors for this high-profile case, we got it down to about 210, if my numbers are correct. They brought them in for one day. They questioned them. They really got in to know these jurors. And then we didn't find out the makeup of that jury for quite some time. Remember, Judge Tammy Kemp, it was a Friday night. She made the phone call to them at their homes from her personal phone to let them know that they were selected. It was not until the first day of this trial and to the day of opening statements that we actually put eyes on those jurors. But it was a largely minority jury. Now, I want to tell you the thing about this jury, if you will. Interesting enough, and it came into play in closing arguments, because jury selection was so interesting, it was prosecutor Jason Fine who really played a big role in that. I'm just looking over my shoulder to make sure we don't miss the Jean family as they come out. He worked very closely in that jury selection. They got to know him. He joked with them. He was very jovial. He seemingly won them over during jury selection. They would not see Jason Fine again until closing arguments. And strategically, most likely, they had him the state begin the closing arguments. And it was a different Jason Fine than these jurors saw earlier in jury selection. This Jason Fine was business. He was to the point. He reminded them of things that he told them during jury selection. Also, Toby Shook, all-star defense attorney, he also spoke with them during jury selection. He tried to remind them of some of those same things, but there was a marked relationship with that jovial nature between the prosecution's Jason Fine and those jurors that may have carried over through to the deliberation phase.
Larry, hang with us for a second. You know, it took this jury about 6 hours to come to this guilty verdict. But we did see that red light go off a few times during their deliberations. What are you hearing maybe some of their questions might have been to get to this point?
So there were three questions that happened throughout the course of this morning. One was a definition of manslaughter. The other was some questions about the Castle Doctrine. Remember, that was in play for this case, and the prosecution had actually objected to that being a part of the jury's charge because, of course, this was Botham Jean's apartment. The Castle Doctrine is usually, in essence, a law that's meant to protect a homeowner. But Judge Tammy Kemp did allow that to be a part of that jury's charge. And some feared that would be a little confusing, right? Because it is, in fact, to protect a homeowner. I'm going to take a second to look over my shoulder here just to see what's going on. There's a bit of commotion.
Hey Larry, while you're there, ask your photographer to zoom out a little bit and give our viewers a sense of where you are in relation to the actual courtroom.
Absolutely. Let's get our photographer to screen over this way. I'm going to move out of the way. You see, this is the media circus right here. This is all the media waiting to hear from those who are able to talk. Remember, that gag order, in essence, is still in place. He's going to zoom up, and then we're going to go pan to the right here. This is the entrance to the hallway that leads to Judge Tammy Kemp's courthouse. You see that metal detector right there? That's not normally there. This was brought in because this is such a high-profile case. And in fact, I want to mark that today's security was even even greater than we've seen in past days, most likely because of this looming jury verdict. Down the hall there is where Judge Tammy Kemp's courtroom is. The Botham Jean family is still down there. Amber Guyger, her family, her team are still down there. This is not the end. This is the end of this phase of this case. Again, there will still have to be a sentencing phase of this case. And we're hearing cheers now erupting down the hallway right now. We would assume that is from the family of Botham Jean down there. We're waiting to hear from them. Again, they can talk to us. Their civil attorneys can talk to us. They are not under that gag order. So we're hoping to get a sense of what they're feeling. One can only imagine. It's been almost a year. Remember, Botham Jean's birthday was just this Sunday. This jury selection started on the anniversary of the day he was killed in his apartment. So there have been a lot of landmarks that have hit during this trial that have likely made this entire experience extremely difficult for this family.
We know that the jury, Larry, will also have to decide the punishment phase of this trial, but you have mentioned and you've referenced that the Jean's family is now also suing. It's a civil suit, essentially, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's a federal lawsuit that they filed against Amber Guyger and the city of Dallas, claiming basically they're arguing that Guyger used excessive force and violated Jean's civil rights, and said the city could have prevented Jean's death by providing better training to its officers. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. There is a civil suit in play, which is not uncommon in cases like this. That, too, will have to play out. Training came in question. Now, how this case will affect that case, especially on the Amber Guyger side of it, remains unseen. Again, the city, of course, named, so that will also come into play as well. And I want to also mention, as we wait for the Jean family, this trial could have some far-reaching implications within the Dallas Police Department. Testimony has brought into question from many local activist groups some things that have happened. Martin Rivera, the partner of Amber Guyger, admitted through testimony to deleting those text messages between himself and Amber Guyger on the night that Botham Jean was killed. That has now sparked a local group to call for the reopening of another case that he was involved with, that was an officer-involved shooting where an unarmed man was killed. Also, Dallas Police Association President Michael Mata is now in the hot seat. Local activists calling for him to resign. Now, this is something that the jury's not even aware of, but on the night that Botham Jean was killed, that Amber Guyger shot Botham Jean when she was in a police cruiser, through video evidence that was presented to Judge Tammy Kemp and not the jury, it shows a person who appears to be the president of the Dallas Police Association taking Amber Guyger out of the back of the patrol car, instructing Sergeant Brianna Valentine to turn off the recording devices. That is all going to play out in the days and weeks to come. So there's still a lot more that we've got to pay attention to that really could have some ripple effects around the city of Dallas.
Larry, I know you're in the hallway right now, but we are also looking live in the courtroom. We can see Amber Guyger now standing up, as well as one of our attorneys to her left right now. As you said before, this is not over yet. We're still talking about what the punishment is going to be for Amber Guyger, guilty of murder, that coming down just about 15 minutes ago. About 5 to 99 years, though, could be the punishment when you talk about murder in this case.
There's Amber Guyger making her way out of the courtroom now, too.
So, Larry, you might be seeing them.
I'm watching that video with you guys now. We do see her. We see them leaving now. Now, usually when they leave, they have been taking a back route. Security here at the courthouse has been for their benefit to protect Amber Guyger. You will remember NBC5 got a source told us that there had been credible threats against her life, which then prompted quite a bit of extra security here. They tapped into the Dallas County Fire Marshal's office to add a part of her guard as she entered every morning. It became all hands on deck. Remember, the Dallas Police Department would not allow the use of certain off time for its police officers for the duration of this trial, as going along with the Texas State Fair. But we will keep an eye out for Amber Guyger's departure. I would not expect for it to come this way. It would be unlikely. This is a very congested and has become an increasingly congested area in the courtroom right now, in the courthouse right now. And if they are, in fact, worried about her safety, this would not be the way to take her out.
I think what we're looking at here, Laura and Larry, is the extended family of Amber Guyger there inside State District Judge Tammy Kemp's courtroom there. I know you had another question, Laura.
No, and to your point, Chris, I was just going to say, as Larry has been covering this since it happened, since a year ago, and Larry has continuously said that this changed the lives of two people at one time on the same night. And so as we're looking at the family of Amber Guyger, we saw Botham Jean's family leaving the courtroom after that verdict was read. This is a big part of why this has been in the national spotlight, Larry, because so many people looking to this case asking the question why, how, and what happens next.
Laura, absolutely. That is something that's not been lost on anyone that we've talked to on either side. Two lives, two families have been changed forever. They do believe that Amber Guyger thought that it was another person, that it was her apartment. They do believe that, which makes it difficult for this to happen. We spoke with the friends of Botham Jean and his pastor, and they say that they would, if in fact
Good morning, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and you saw it here. You saw the trial here on Crime Talk, and now you saw the verdict read live. Amber Guyger was found guilty of first-degree murder of Botham Jean. The sentencing will be this afternoon at 1:30 Central Time there in Dallas, and in some states, not a lot, but in some, the juries will come to the determination of sentencing. A lot of states don't do this, but Texas is a little unusual in this, and based upon that process, I believe, is the most important part. And it is a science in and of itself, how you select a jury. A lot of it is gut feeling. There's people that are making eye contact with you or your client, and you have to try to get that feel for it. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. You just never know until the verdict is read if you got it completely right. So that was one of the most important parts. But the second part, and we aired this all day yesterday, was when they were arguing about jury instructions, okay? I guess it was actually 2 days ago, but jury instructions. That is significant because that is the law, the definitions, the elements that the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this particular case, the defense argued for the Castle Doctrine instruction, basically saying, hey, if you believe that it's kind of your house, you have a right to defend yourself. I didn't think it really applied based upon kind of the standard, but the judge said that I'm going to give it, okay? And normally, for an instruction to be given, for example, like on a self-defense or this Castle Doctrine in Texas, the standard is very low. It just has to be a mere scintilla of evidence, okay? And one of the reasons why cases are reversed on appeal is when the judge is tendered instructions, usually by the defense, and the judge rejects it. And then it goes up on appeal, and the Court of Appeal says, hey, there was some evidence here. You should have given that instruction. So the judge basically made a very smart decision. And I've argued this judge before in front of judges and said, hey, listen, Your Honor, cases come back when you don't give them instructions. Let's give them the instruction, and if they believe it's viable, they can do it, but at least not, they've had a chance to reject it. And here, the jury rejected those defense instructions that were favorable to the defense, and the judge, basically, for lack of a better term, made a clean appellate record on that because the instructions were tendered, jury had an opportunity to consider it, and they completely rejected it. So that was probably, had those instructions been rejected, been one of the best appellate arguments that Amber Guyger would have on appeal. But with that being said, it's pretty much gone. This was a pretty clean trial. In fact, I think the judge went out of her way to make sure that Ms. Guyger received a fair trial, because no judge wants their case to come back. And this Judge Kim, Judge Tammy Kim, did in my opinion, a very good job. I was a little surprised when she was crying at various parts, at least one part in the trial. I didn't think that was particularly appropriate for a judge, but this is human stuff. This is things taking place with, it's unplugged. It's reality. It is what it is, and it was obviously emotional trial facts. There are no winners in this case. The Botham Jean's family, Botham John, I'm sorry. No, it's pronounced Jean, isn't it? Like Jean, like, yeah. Sorry. So the Jean family, they have a civil lawsuit pending, obviously against Ms. Guyger. She's going to have no resources, no money. But of course, they're trying to sue the Dallas Police Department, saying that if you had provided better training, maybe this never would have happened. Obviously, I think that in the civil suit, the Dallas Police Department will allege that she's off duty. What are we supposed to do? But police officers are technically on duty 24/7 in most jurisdictions. So, my guess is at some point the city of Dallas will settle with the Jean family. So they're coming back this afternoon at 1:30 for sentencing. Basically, you're probably going to hear from the prosecution side. You're going to hear family members more about Mr. Jean. You're going to hear about her, or about his, his family, how they've been affected by this, and what they think is the appropriate penalty. Okay, it's very emotional, but it's very hard for a jury to actually, sit there and say this is the punishment that you're going to be imposed. My experience, jurors are a little, when they do the sentencing, and my experience with that was in the military, where you can have the jury members in that particular case do the sentencing. They usually come back a little softer on sentencing than a judge would do, because frankly, they have a better idea, as the judge does, as to what is kind of normally the appropriate sentence. But that's the beautiful thing about the jury doing the sentencing is the people decide. It's a very good system in my opinion. The defense, they're probably going to be somewhat limited. Amber Guyger's testified, but there may be appellate issues that they'll try, so she may or may not testify. She's already said really what she has said. And, the question is whether she came across as credible or not. I think it looked a little rehearsed, it looked a little scripted, and I frankly would not have put her on first in the defense case as they did, or, really close to being first. I would have put her on near the end and see how things played out. I think that was a tactical decision the defense made, and, frankly, I don't think it was the overall decision that her placement in testimony would have made much decisions at all. But clearly at that point, when you put a defendant on the stand, it goes from looking at all of the evidence to, do we believe her? And clearly the jury rejected Amber Guyger's testimony. And I thought the cross was somewhat effective on her, is that there's so many things that she could have done. Okay. And so often police officers and police-involved shootings get a complete and total pass because they're police officers. They were in fear of their life. But here she was off duty, and a jury looked at it and said, you know what? You should have done everything you could have. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing to have, because so many times in any kind of case where there's a shooting, a stabbing, where somebody's claiming self-defense, juries look at it and say, what were other things that you could have done before you had to actually shoot somebody or stab somebody to defend yourself? And here the jury rejected her claim that she thought she was in her apartment, that she thought that there was an intruder in there, and that she was in fear for her life. They basically said, you should have retreated, gone out the door, called the police, do anything. There were so many clues that she should have done, but maybe if she wasn't texting her partner, and when I say texting, I mean sexting her partner, as all this was going down, maybe she would have been a little more attentive. So, and that's where I thought maybe the jury would at least come back with some sort of manslaughter or something along those lines, but they rejected that as well. So we're going to come back at 1:30. We're going to have the sentencing phase. We appreciate you tuning in. If you like the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button. If you like this, we're going to try to provide more of this type of information to you, to be the place where really you can come to for basically the raw facts. We've tried to be the most unbiased, fact-driven channel on YouTube when it comes to the true crime genre. And here, by letting you actually see the trial, we're not spinning just the facts. We're going to talk about it, but you all can go back and look at the facts and see, what the jury would have done, or see what the jury did in this particular case, and would you have done the same thing? So leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Have a great day, and we'll be back after the sentencing phase.